Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 15 tight end start or sit decisions. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so. Oh, I pointed the wrong way. Cool graphics going to fly into the screen at Notorious FNTSY. Today's video is brought to you guys by DraftKings Sportsbook. We're going to be talking about it a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get to my week number 15 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. In this matchup, I like George Kittle. Now, I understand that George Kittle has been incredibly streaky and inconsistent this season. He has had multiple stretches of games where he looks incredible, like one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And then we've seen stretches of games where the guy has been a disaster for your fantasy football lineup. Now, without Deebo Samuel for the next couple of games, I really do believe that big cock Brock Purdy is going to be throwing the ball a lot more to George Kittle. The 49ers defense is a little bit underrated, but here I'm definitely firing up George Kittle with confidence. Noah Fant is going to be a sit for me. They do love to throw the ball to the tight end in Seattle, but they also have Will Dissly. There's also a pretty crowded wide receiver core there, with Goodwin at points having some pretty solid games, as well as obviously DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and the return of Kenneth Walker potentially in this game. I just feel like Noah Fant's kind of the odd man out in this scenario. If you argued with me that you wanted to start him over maybe one of the bottom of the barrel tight ends that I talk about as like, hey, they're a start, but they're just barely a start, and you want to go with Fant over them, I probably wouldn't argue with you too much, because the upside of Fant is incredibly high. The thing that kind of does him dirty here is the matchup against the Niners is incredibly tough. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Minnesota Vikings. In this spot, I'm going to start TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson has been relatively consistent this whole time he has been a Minnesota Viking. On Detroit, there was some big ups and downs, but here in Minnesota, he has been relatively consistent. Now, the Indianapolis Colts matchup doesn't necessarily scare me, but it also doesn't make me super excited to start TJ Hockenson. But with the situation he's in and with how incredibly safe he has been game in and game out, I like him up against the Colts defense. When it comes to Colts tight end Jelani Woods, he's going to be a sit for me. Now, I know a lot of people are going to advocate for the Colts this week because, hey, the Vikings defense is absolute dick cheese, bottom of the barrel up against the pass. And sure, I understand that that is true. Not going to argue with that sentiment, but I just cannot trust Matt Ryan worth anything. I know Jelani Woods has the upside to have a big game. They utilize a couple of different tight ends in Indianapolis, so I'm going to leave him on the bench even though this matchup is solid. Next up, we got the Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. Here, I'm going to be starting both of the tight ends. Mark Andrews has been relatively bad over the last couple of games, but we all know deep down that Mark Andrews has the upside to any week blow the back out of your fantasy football opponent. He's one of the few tight ends like him, George Kittle, and Kelsey, who it would never really shock me if the guy goes out there and scores 25, 30 points, gets multiple touchdowns, right? So up against the Cleveland Browns, I don't necessarily love this game environment because Tyler Huntley may not play, and we might have to deal with Anthony Brown under center, and that would be absolutely atrocious for the Baltimore Ravens. But here, I will start Mark Andrews, but I'm not as confident as normal, but you would feel like a complete and utter dumb fuck if you ended up benching Mark Andrews, and then he goes absolutely bananas and scores like 2 touchdowns in this game, which is possible. David Njoku is going to be a start for me. He was really solid this season with Jacoby Brissett, looks decent with Deshaun Watson. The game environment might be positive if Tyler Huntley ends up playing. I think David Njoku will be able to get it done in this game for fantasy football, and he does have top 5 upside. Next up, we got the Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills to close out the Saturday slate. Here, I'm going to go with Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox has been another one of those guys that is incredibly inconsistent, and actually most of this season, he's been consistent, but consistently bad. Last week, he did a fucking flip into the end zone, somehow keeping his body. I don't even know how he did that, and scores a touchdown. It was nice to see. Again, Dawson Knox, one time if you're with me, he's been one of my favorite tight ends over last year, and going into the season, I really heavily advocated for Knox. He hasn't really paid off this season. The Dolphins aren't necessarily the best defense on the road. On the road, they're absolutely terrible, so I think Dawson Knox should be able to get it done in this game. Mike Likiamagasicki, while he does have my favorite nickname of any player, ultimately, Mike Gesicki is touchdown or bust, and in a majority majority of games this year, he has been a complete and utter bust. Next up, we move to the Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. Now, it appears that Juwan Johnson will not be good to go in this game, thus heavily elevating Taysom Hill. With Andy Dalton under center, I feel like they want to use Taysom Hill even more. I have no idea why Andy Dalton is still under center. I really think Dennis Allen is a fucking idiot for not going with Jameis Winston, but what do I know? After all, Taysom Hill here up against a garbage Falcons defense has the upside to score 20 plus points. Now, the thing with Taysom Hill that you have to understand, and I talk about every single week, is this guy is the definition, one of the other guys that is completely boom or bust. You have to understand when you start Taysom Hill that this guy might literally put up 0 points. But he has the upside to put your fantasy team on his back. I'm not going to have him ranked super high in the tight end rankings later on in the week, but if you're in a pinch and you need to start him, there's definitely a lot worse options than Taysom Hill. McCole Pruitt has actually been pretty solid for the team. They're switching to Desmond Ridder. I want to kind of watch this situation from afar before I really want to throw out any Falcons player to be starting. Next up, we move to a matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Carolina Panthers. If Pat Freiermuth is good to go, you're going to start him every single game. Doesn't fucking matter who he's playing up against, even if Kiss and Titties Mitchell Trubisky is under center. The team loves to heavily utilize Mike Tomlin's game plan is to heavily feed the rock down the throat of Pat Freiermuth, and he has been very solid game in and game out. We really haven't seen any monster huge performances out of Pat Freiermuth this season, but again, he has been so consistent that he's definitely start worthy this week. My guy Tommy, make that ass tremble, is going to be a sit here up against the Steelers. Mono man Sam Darnold has been relatively decent over the last 2 games, so I'm not really going to shit on Sam Darnold because he's definitely better than I thought he would be. But when it comes to Tommy Tremble, his usage just is not high enough to be start worthy, and the Steelers defense is pretty solid. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Chicago Bears, and what could be the highest scoring game on the week. Even if the Bears can't really keep up, the Eagles might just shit down the throat of the Chicago Bears. Dallas Goedert should be coming back from injury this week. It is still up in the air if he's going to end up playing or not. If he doesn't play, then Jack Stoll would be the starting tight end, and in that case, I am not playing Jack Stoll. But if Goddard is healthy, you're going to play him. You know the upside that he has. He has been an incredibly efficient tight end this season. He hasn't really been seeing a boatload of touches every single week, which makes sense, right? Because you have AJ Brown, you have Miles Sanders who's on fire, you have Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper, right? They got a lot of options. There's a lot of cooks in the metaphorical kitchen of the Philadelphia Eagles, but if Goddard's playing, you're going to start him. Cole Kmet with Justin Fields, you play him every single week. Now, I know he's been in a bit of a slump recently, but we do know the upside that Justin Fields possesses to take this team into fucking overdrive and Cole Kmet to have a crazy game, so I'm definitely willing to start him in this spot. Next up, we move to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Houston Texans. Here it's pretty obvious you want to start Travis Kelce. Now, even in Kelce's down bad games where Kelce metaphorically shits the bed, right? You're pissed off because, oh, Kelce didn't do that great. He probably still gets you like 9 points. The problem with Kelce, and this isn't an actual problem, is that you say he shits the bed when he has a decent game because we are so used to the greatness that Travis Kelce possesses inside of him. This might be a certified ass whooping up against Houston. I kind of hope this game stays close because then we'll see even more Travis Kelce in this spot. But even if this is an ass whooping and ass beating, Travis Kelce could score 3 touchdowns in the first half and have a really, really good game, even if he gets benched in the second half. Jordan Atkins has shown some pizzazz a little bit this season, but he's not a guy I'd be willing to start. There are some people asking me about Jeff Driscoll, who on Yahoo is technically listed as a quarterback / tight end, so you can actually play him. Now, he is another one of those guys like Taysom Hill. He's like Walmart Taysom Hill, where you got to understand that he might score you 0 points, but if he ends up being the starting quarterback in the game and runs at a touchdown or throws a touchdown, he probably smashes at the tight end spot, but he's not a guy that I'd be banging the drum for either. But before we move on into the rest of the games here, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, if you're a brand new user to DraftKings Sportsbook, you can click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment down below and bet $5 on any sport pregame money line. You'll win $150 in free bets if your team wins. So since I said if your team wins, once you sign up on DraftKings Sportsbook, I'm going to throw it on the screen right now. We are going to navigate to college basketball at the top left of the screen, because college basketball has the biggest favorites. Tonight, we are going to go with Nevada minus 1,500 versus UC San Diego. Bet $5 on them. You'll win $150 in free bets if they win. And again, we go with college basketball because minus 1,500. You're not going to see that very often in the NFL, the NBA, and that is obviously they are a huge favorite here up against UC San Diego. So we're going to assume that they hit. Obviously, you can bet anything you want, but I think college basketball is the safest. That bet is for today, December 14th. So if you're watching this at a later date, just watch a more recent video. I will talk about a bet that I like that day as well. And if you live in Maryland, you will actually receive $200 in free bets instead of $150. Next up, we move to the Dallas Cowboys at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and what could be an incredibly fun, high-scoring game as well. Dalton Schultz is a must-start every single week. He's not quite up on that echelon of George Kittle or Mark Andrews or Kelsey in terms of guys that I rely on more. Now, I understand, Nick, George Kittle's been fucking dick cheese. Use that word too much, Nick. George Kittle's been pretty inconsistent recently, and yeah, I agree with you. But he's still one of those guys, like, it's not going to surprise you if he goes bananas, has a huge game. Dalton Schultz also wouldn't surprise me, but he's, like, kind of a tier below those guys. Jaguars' defense is Swiss cheese. They have holes everywhere. The Cowboys, though, how about them boys? They almost lost to the Houston Texans. Yikes. Dalton Schultz, though, he's going to be a start. Evan Ingram went nuclear. He went fucking insane in the membrane last week up against the Atlanta Titans. I don't think he does it again against the Cowboys, but you're definitely starting Evan Ingram. He's been pretty decent recently. Next up, we got the Detroit Lions at the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, the quarterback situation in New York is certainly up in the air. The Lions have one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL, so I'm willing to start Tyler Conklin, but if Zach Wilson ends up starting, I'm probably going to retract all of my starts for the Jets aside from Zonovan Knight, because I don't really know what this team's going to look like with Zach Wilson, because I know what it's going to look like. It's going to look worse than it would with Mike White under center. Brock Wright, tight end of the Detroit Lions, they use a couple of tight ends, has actually been pretty decent at points in the season. But again, not a guy you want to rely on, especially up against one of the better defenses in the NFL and the Jets. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Denver Broncos. Colt McCoy versus Brett Gripping It and Ripping It. Greg Dulcich has been pretty solid over the last couple of games. Now, the quarterback change definitely does dampen the upside of Greg Dulcich. I know some people joke, Nick, fucking Russell Wilson sucks ass, right? It doesn't matter that they're going to Brett Rippin. Well, Russell Wilson looked like he was on a tear last week, so maybe we could have seen a strong end of the season from Russell Wilson. Now, still a guy I probably would have avoided in fantasy, but maybe he could keep Greg Dulcich over water. This is a great matchup. The Cardinals defense is soft as baby shit, so I really do like Dulcich here, but the quarterback situation obviously doesn't make me as confident because Brett Rippin's pretty bad. He's not awful. Like, there's a lot worse backup quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's also not like Mike White or even Teddy Bridgewater, some of those, or Gardner Minshew, some of those quarterbacks that I think are pretty solid backups. Trey McBride is going to be a sit. Now, with Kyler under center, you can almost do the mental gymnastics like, oh, Kyler loves the tight end. He likes Zach Ertz. Maybe McBride will break out. But with Colt fucking McCoy under center, there's no way I'm trusting Trey McBride. Next up, we move to the New England Deflatriots at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have activated both Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow off of the IR. Now, that does not mean that Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are playing this week. If Darren Waller plays, I'm going to play him because he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL and he has big upside. Now, he might absolutely suck. He might be terrible. He might score 1 point. He might score 0 points and leave a goose egg right on your fantasy team in the playoffs. But he also has that humongous upside. If he doesn't play, then I'm fine playing Foster Moreau. There's going to be people, Nick, Moreau got a goose egg last week, 0 points. How can you trust him? Well, I trust him because I don't think the Raiders are going to be that bad in this game. But maybe I'm wrong. The Raiders find new ways, like, every week to really dampen your expectations. Like, you come in with it's like that meme with the sign. It's like, our expectations were low, but fuck, this is bad, or whatever the sign says. It's like, you really start to, like, there's always, like, 1 or 2 games this year there has been where it's like, ooh, the Raiders looking a little sneaky. Maybe the Raiders are a little bit frisky. Maybe the Raiders are a little bit sneaky good. Maybe they could beat this team. And then they might do that. And then, like, the next week, they fucking suck ass and they're terrible. So Foster Moreau is kind of interesting. Definitely would prefer Hunter Henry. Very touchdown dependent, but the Raiders defense is very, very bad. Next up, we move to the Atlanta Titans at the LA Chargers. Both tight ends here are starts for me. Now, with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, all active, the upside of Gerald Everett, there's 2 ways to look at this. There's the devil versus the angel argument. The devil and the angel on your shoulder. So the devil will tell you, Nick, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer are healthy. Gerald Everett is now unsafe because there's so many cooks in the kitchen. Then there's the angel that says, Nick, all the receivers are back, so they're going to be able to move the ball more effectively. Justin Herbert, the pervert, has more upside to throw a touchdown, and Gerald Everett might score that touchdown. And that's kind of the thought process that I am in here. I'm more positive, pro Gerald Everett. Now, I don't think this is necessarily a smash game against the Titans, but would it surprise me if Everett got a touchdown, a couple of catches, and ends up being a top 8 tight end? No. Chig Okonkwo, Chigoziem Okonkwo, we call him Chig here. He has been good. Very good. Last couple of games, he's been eating up targets like how Ezekiel Elliott eats fucking cereal in the morning. If you've ever seen that gif of him going, oh, whoa, whoa, just destroying that cereal. Good matchup against the Chargers. I know the Dolphins shit the bed against the Chargers. Nick, you idiot, you said the Dolphins would win. Yeah, fucking funny, right? Funny. But I think Chig is in for a pretty solid game, and he's kind of moving up to must-start category. Next up, we move to the Bengals at the Buccaneers. Tom Brady has been bad, like at points this season, really bad last week, but he looked like Stevie Wonder in the pocket. But my favorite thing about Brady is, like, while he's old as fuck, like while he was playing football and the Flintstones were walking around Earth, yabba dabba doo. Is that even from that? Or is that from fucking Scooby-Doo? No, it's definitely not. Yabba dabba doo, that's gotta be Fred Flintstone, I think. But yeah, so when it comes to Tom Brady, it's funny because he still shows that same pizzazz, that fire, that anger, regardless of how good his team is. Like, the Bucs were getting their back blown out. Absolutely skull-fucked. And Brady's still, like, talking to his team, firing them up. Like, we ain't going out like bitches, blah, blah, blah. It's not what he actually says. I don't think Tom says stuff like that. But you get what I mean. So, interesting game here. Maybe Tom bounces back. But at tight end, Mitchell Wilcox and Cade Otton are the starting tight ends? Fuck no, baby. Next up, we move to the Giants at the Commanders for Sunday Night Football. Daniel Bellinger, Logan Thomas are going to be sits for me. Bellinger has sewn like he's fucking knitting or something. That's not knitting. You got it. Using a sewing machine was the joke, but I fucked it up. Swing and a miss. Ball already in the catcher's mitt, but we don't edit out bad jokes here. We just keep them in. You know, shows that I'm human. I miss sometimes, you know? But Daniel Bellinger looked good at points in the season. The Commanders' defense looks pretty stout. Like, I don't know. I just don't really want to play Bellinger in this game. Logan Thomas is one of my favorite tight ends in the NFL, but he has been awful this season. I don't even know if he's had one productive game off the top of my head. And if he has, it's just one and productive game. We haven't seen shit out of him this season. I'm sitting him. Final game here, we got the Rams at the Packers on Monday Night Football. Higbee and Tonyan are the starters. Tonyan has been a lot like Thomas. Two guys I really liked late in drafts. Two guys that shown really high upside that just didn't pay off this year. Higbee, we've seen this season some real high highs, like some really good games where he's just getting the ball is just getting jammed down his throat. He's getting the ball thrown to him a million times. And then some other games where doing his best John Cena impression, the motherfucker is invisible. Look, Baker's under center. Baker didn't really target him too much last week. Should be interesting to see what the game plan is for the Rams, knowing now that Baker, you know, hasn't been there for 2 days or a day and a half. He's been there for a whole week plus. We'll see. I'm rooting for Baker, but again, Tyler Higbee is just best left on your bench. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. If you want to go ahead and check out DraftKings, which you should, links down below in the video description. Bet $5 on any sport pregame moneyline. You receive $150 in free bets if your bet wins. Again, Nevada minus 1,500 versus UC San Diego. I love you guys all so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good.